Welcome back to Press Review in Depth. As the United States engages in more airstrikes against the Islamic State, I'll look at claims that the US is using this issue to mobilise against and overthrow the governments of Syria and Iran. Mehdi Darius Nazem Rouaya writes in Global Research, fighting ISIS is a smokescreen for US mobilization against Syria and Iran. Nazem Rouaya writes, before the US-led bombings in Syria started, there were unverified reports being circulated that Washington had started a dialogue with Damascus through Russian and Iraqi channels to discuss military coordination and the Pentagon bombing campaign in Syria. He adds, like Syria, al-Maliki's government's cardinal sin were tied to blocking the pathway to Tehran. Firstly, the Iraqi government evicted the Pentagon from Iraq at the end of 2011, which removed US troops stationed directly on Iran's western border. Secondly, the Iraqi federal government was working to expel anti-government Iranian militants from Iraq and to close Camp Ashraf, which could be used in a war or regime change operations against Iran. He adds the bombing campaign that the US has started in Syria is illegal and a violation of the UN Charter. This is why the Pentagon took the step of claiming that the US-led bombing campaign was prompted by the threat of an imminent attack that was being planned against the territory of the US. He also says, while admitting that Syria did not use any material prohibited by the Chemical Weapons Commission, Kerry told US legislators that Damascus had breached its commitments to the CWC on September the 18th, 2014. In other words, Washington intends to go after Syria and pursue regime change in Damascus. If this does not make it clear, then the fact that the US will use Saudi Arabia to train more anti-government forces should. And the Daily Star writes about President Obama's statement saying that he underestimated the Islamic State. The paper said US-led strikes have so far failed to halt an advance by fighters in northern Syria on a Kurdish town. Fighting raged between Islamic State militants and Kurdish forces near Kobani on the border with Turkey, where the past week's battle caused the fastest refugee flight of Syria's 3-year civil war. The paper also says the head of Syria's Al-Qaeda branch said militants will attack the West in retaliation for US-led airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. The article adds the head of Syria's Al-Qaeda branch, the Nusra Front, a Sunni militant group which is a rival of ISIS and has also been targeted by US strikes, said Islamists would carry out attacks on the West in retaliation for the campaign. The article also says the US strikes have created pressure on Nusra to reconcile with ISIS, a move that would potentially create a single Sunni Islamist force in Syria and widen territory under its control. The article says Mr. Obama still wants Assad to leave power, but considers ISIS the more urgent threat. He said for Syria to remain united, it is not possible that Assad presides over that entire process. Well, now we're joined by political analyst Nidal Naissa in Syria. Thank you for joining us again, Nidal.
Thank you very much. Good evening to you all.
Do you believe that, as some have claimed, that these US-led attacks against the Islamic State are a way for the US-led coalition to replace the governments of Syria and Iran?
First of all, we know this is a continuous scenario since the US launched the so-called Arab Spring. It's one circle of this scenario, which has been now taking place for 3 years. What is the United States doing now is removing the Syrian regime by force when its agents on the ground couldn't do that for the last 3 years. I heard some phrase in your report that in Syria there was a civil war or so. There has never been a civil war in Syria. The militants or the mercenaries, the Blackwater mercenaries, and the Saudi agents and the fighters, Al-Qaeda fighters, have been infiltrating into Syria through Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon for 3 years. They were attacking and killing civilians and destroying cities and other Syrian government foundations. These actions, in fact, were called in the Western media and its allies, excuse me, as civil war or revolutionary. Now, the United States itself and its allies and the West in general are calling those fighters, so-called one upon the time, as fighters of freedoms and revolutionaries and rebels. They call them, the same people now became Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and became terrorists. This is one of the great enigmas of time and of the political scene now.
If the US was not launching these strikes, how would the Syrian government deal with the Islamic State?
In fact, the Syrian government has been fighting those 3 years before the United States and President Obama discovered that these are terrorists and these are ISIS or ISIL as the Americans call them. And the Syrian army has been, in fact, cleansing and cleaning Syria of them for the last 3 years and made many great victories in this regard. Now the entrance of the United States will, I think, will impede or forbid the Syrians to continue their mission in fighting these terrorists. Now the United States is bombarding refineries and oil foundations. What has this to do with the Syrian army's fighting of the terrorists?
The Gulf allies of the United States, some even in the US media, have pointed out that they are not democracies, but they are joining the US in this mission to bring democracy to Syria. What do you say to that?
Well, in fact, this tells us about the real intentions and the real goals of the United States in this regard, which is not democracy and not human rights. Because if the United States were interested in human rights and democracy and freedom, it will go first to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, to the Gulf states, who are medieval countries governed by hierarchic families and by oligarchic families in the Gulf, and bring democracy to them. These countries have no constitutions, no laws, no elections, and no any kind of political freedom there. The expression of freedom is forbidden. One poet wrote only one poem about one sheikh. He was sentenced to life sentence in prison. So the United States is using these slogans only just to justify aggression and justify its invasion of other countries and destroying other countries. Look what they have done in Libya. Libya, they said that Gaddafi was so and so and he was committing so and so and so and so. What is the state of Libya now? Has the United States brought democracy to Libya? Is or are the zones or places freed, as they say in Syria, in the cities which are governed now by the Islamic State, which was, as they call, a freed state? Is there any kind of democracy or human rights applied there? We have beheadings, we have raping, we have killing, we have destruction, we have no law. We have the barbaric Islamic law there, where a man is beheaded only if he utters any word against any political figure or he wanted to express his own will. So if the United States were really...
Mr. Naser, unfortunately we'll have to end it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much, thank you.
That was Nidal Naser, political analyst. And for more updates, please visit levant.tv. And subscribe to MidEast In-Depth on iTunes. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.